looks like our attendees are still rolling in, but I'll go ahead and get started so that we stay relatively on time. Welcome everyone to the Simio Solutions Series November 18th edition. Today's session is on, and it's a mouthful, auto placement and creation of objects for rapid data-driven modeling. My name is Dan Vasileni. I'm the VP of Global Sales here at Simio. And today's session actually is our partner spotlight session, where our partners at Simulation Engineering Technologies in South Africa are actually going to be presenting here today. Willem and Ruben will be the two main presenters, and I will introduce them here shortly. But before we truly get started, a few housekeeping items before we get going. First and foremost, please be aware that today's session is being recorded for replay purposes. If you'd like to go back and watch this session in the future or recommend it to a colleague or someone else, it will be live on the Simio webpage, the recording of this session. Usually we have it up in about 12 to 24 hours, so hopefully by the beginning of next week, the recording will be live for anyone to go back and watch. Just so you are aware, also, you are entering in mute mode, so we will not be able to hear you if you try to talk to us. The best way to get in touch with us during this session is in the question box in the GoToWebinar dashboard somewhere on your screen. On my side of the screen, it's located on the right. You might have moved it around, but it's on the right side of the screen, and there should be a question area where you can type in questions. So during today's session, if you do have a question, we ask that you type it in there. If it is a question that is relevant or something that is pertinent to what's being talked about, I will try to interrupt and ask the question at that point in time. If your question is more generic in nature, I'll ask it at the end of our session. We do leave time at the end for Q&A, so we can either get the questions during that period of time. Today's session is scheduled to last 60 minutes. I think after talking to Willem and Ruben, we probably have about 30 to 35 minutes of presentation. So this one might go a little bit quicker than normal, but if you do have questions, like I said, please feel free to ask them. Futures. So this is it for 2022. This is our last solution series for this year. I do want to thank we've had thousands of people actually attend these sessions live, and we've had hundreds more go back and watch the recordings. So thanks to everyone who has either attended live or watched the recordings. We do plan on being back again in 2023. As I mentioned in our last session, we are currently working on a calendar, and we are going to have the calendar that's going to be set for, you'll know exactly what day it's going to be on and exactly what month. We're going to do once a month in 2023, and it'll be either the second or third Friday of the month, and it'll be 11 a.m. So you'll know the exact time for it, so you're not guessing or trying to find us. But we'll have that up live here, hopefully within the next 30 days here. And then lastly, before I turn it over to Willem and Ruben, so Simio Sync 2023. It's our annual Simio conference. It is still going to be virtual next year one more time. Hopefully then we get back to being in person, but it is going to be on March 1st and 2nd. And like I said, it'll be a virtual conference. Right now, we're still working on finalizing the speakers and the agenda, and we'll be releasing that here towards the end of this year or early into 2023. Other than that, Willem, Ruben, I will turn it over to you guys. I think, Willem, you're on first. And I'll do a quick sound check.
Sure, I'm assuming my sound's working.
Your sound is working perfect, and you just need to grab control.
Yep, will do. Thank you. There we go. Morning, everyone. Well, for us, it's late afternoon, 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So hope everything goes smooth. It's a bit late. So we're going to take you through the auto placement side of things, but just a quick intro as to who we are. We're a simulation firm that was founded in 2004. We've got about 20 industrial engineers doing mostly Simio simulation, and we work predominantly in the mining industry. So that's where our area of expertise are, but we do a bit of transactional, like for insurance companies, a bit of port type simulation. So it goes all over, and we then also do a bit of the production scheduling and so forth. And we also give sales, we also resell Simio, obviously, as one of the long-standing partners of Simio. And that's a very quick intro to who we are. You're welcome to ask more about that. So I'm going to probably give over to Ruben soon, but just to take you through what we're going to cover. we're going to go through the table-based auto creation within Simio. So Ruben's going to take you actively through that and a couple of case studies where we've now used it and how much time it saved. And then we've got a couple of hidden features that's enabled through Simio API that you might be interested in. So Ruben, over to you.
All right, thank you, Willem. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear my sound? Is it all working?
Yep.
Okay. Quickly share my screen here. Okay, so skip to where am I? Okay, perfect. So as you might have thought based on the title of this webinar, today we're going to be looking at the Simio Auto Create feature and also extending that into how we can use this feature to set up data-driven models and basically simulation models that work out of data tables. Okay, so the first feature, or well, the first type of auto create that we're going to be looking at is creating objects within the table and then specifying their locations with the X, Y, and Z coordinates. So as you can see in the top right corner here is an example of a table and how it is set up. So in this case, I'm just creating nodes. So nodes, and then I have an X, Y, and Z column, each with the respective coordinates. And then at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that it actually plots out the nodes as we specify their locations. Now, it's a nice thing to note that this is for any object that you want to place, whether it be tanks or nodes or any object in the standard library that requires just a Cartesian input, so X, Y, and Z. You can do it in this way. Okay, the next thing that we're also going to look at is creating links. So obviously we cannot create a link with the X, Y, and Z coordinate because links require input and output nodes. And yeah, so in this table is an example of how we set that up. So once again, this is a table with the link name, and then we specify the starting and ending node. And then through that, we can then actually create these links automatically between our points. And yeah, it happens instantaneously. Once again, this is for any link. So it could be for paths, for connector, any links will work. And then the last thing we're also going to look at is auto creating elements within the table. Now in this case, I have created 3 stations, and so create the station element, and I've used this reference type set that to create. And then if you go to the definitions tab, you can see there is 3 auto created elements. Okay, so it's all good and well to show slides of this, but I think the best way to actually demonstrate this is to go straight into Simio and do a little demonstration. Okay. All right, great stuff. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are just going to plot the basics, node and links. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So first, we just create our table. I already have table 1 here. I'm going to be creating just a series of nodes and then connecting them with links. So I'm going to put in a node property. Oh, sorry, I just want to move this. Okay, let's call this column the node. Right, and here where it says default value instantation, we're going to change that to auto create. So this tells this table that whatever's in this column we are now going to auto create, and we are just going to auto create a basic node. And once you've put this in, then you'll see it brings up all these other options. All right, so we are going to be looking just now at the X, Y, and Z coordinates so that we can plot them. So I'm going to be creating 3 real property columns. Let's call this one X, Y, and Z. Okay, and now we just specify that our X coordinate is going to look at the value in our column X, same with Y, same with Z. Great. Now we can start with node 1. Right, so we see automatically just as the 0 is created, we now have node 1 populate or created just in the middle. Okay, let's try node 2 and node 3. Just move them up a little bit. Okay. There we go. And that is as easy as it is to create our nodes. So next up, let's try and create links between. So this works very similarly. I'm going to put an object this time, call this our link name. Same thing, auto create, and I'll just make this a path. All right. Then the starting node, we're going to say is, okay, sorry. So for the path, you can see the inputs now to auto create is not the coordinates. We're actually looking at starting and ending nodes. So similarly, we're now going to be creating 2 columns which represent our starting and ending node. Okay. Oops. Saved there by accident. Okay. Starting node and ending node. Right. You might have noticed that I'm naming these columns exactly the same names of what they are here. It's not necessary, but we just do it because it's easy to keep track. Okay, so then in this link name, I'm going to specify that the column we're looking at is starting node and ending node. Great stuff. Link 1. We'll be looking from node 1 to node 2, and link 2 from node 2 to node 3. Okay, and there we go. We've just auto created our first very basic little node and path layout. All right, so this is a very small demonstration of what it's capable of and how to implement it. So just to show you, for an example of a big network that we actually had to go plot, where we had the X and Y coordinates. I can take you to the file there that we had. So here we have all the nodes and their coordinates. So we can just copy that to Simio. Just give it a while. There we go. And let's also copy the paths in. Okay.
Of interest, Ruben, how many objects have you created just now?
Let's see. Okay, so we've created 320 nodes and 560 paths. So within a few seconds, just with our XR coordinates, we have now created this whole network. All right, so yeah, this is a nice demonstration of just the power that this auto create feature has. In this case, it's just for nodes and paths between. So next up, let's show you how you can build an example of a processing plant using the exact same method that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to delete these, but I don't have to actually delete them on the facility view. Once I delete this table, then they will automatically be deleted off the facility view. Okay.
160 errors as well.
Yep.
Or more.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so now just to show you a quick example of a processing plant and how we could auto create the layout of the processing plant with this auto create feature. And then with that example, I'm also going to show how you then can actually subclass objects and then actually control your whole plant just out of these tables. But let me not get ahead of myself. Let's get there first. Okay, so I'm going to add a new table. Let's call this table the tanks. Another table for my flow connectors. Oh, do that. And one for my flow nodes. There we go. Okay. So once again, our tanks, these work exactly the same as the nodes because they are objects. So we place them, call this the tanks, auto create instance. Here I'm going to specify that we're creating a tank. And once again, I'm just going to put the X, Y, and Z property in. Okay. X, Z, perfect. And tank 1, tank 2, tank 3. All right. Okay, so we have now created these 3 tanks. I see I have a error here. I'm not sure what that is. I will take a look at it now. Okay, next let's create just 2 flow nodes, and this is going to be the same as how we created our normal nodes. Flow nodes there. Okay. Okay. Go. Flow node 1. Makes sense. Okay, specify there. And flow node. Right, so here once again we are just creating our flow nodes out of the table with X, Y, and Z coordinates. Specify this here. Okay. 2. Okay. There we have them. And then lastly, we are going to be building our flow connectors. Okay, so this is similar to our links. Let's build an object with the link and starting and ending nodes as well. And ending node. This will be a flow connector with starting points. There you go. And node. Okay, flow node 1, input a tank 1. output the tank 1, 2. Okay, there we go. Oh, it's the wrong way around, but no worries. Okay, just for interest's sake here, so we've now specified our coordinates of the tanks and the flow nodes. However, you can see you can still move these around and it will update those coordinates as you've moved them around. Okay. All right, so I'm going to quickly show you an example of how we imported the layout of one of our plants that we used. So I'm just going to delete these 3 tables quick and look at these original tables that are set up. So we have our tanks. It's exactly the same setup as we have now. And I'm going to input the layout with the coordinates that we have. Go. So tanks are all set up. Input the nodes now. There we go. And lastly, the flow connectors. Okay, great. There we go. And there it is. So this is our layout. We don't have our flow sources and sinks in yet, but that will be very quick to add. But yeah, just like that, we now have the layout of of this plant that we're using. Okay, and now this is where this feature actually becomes very powerful, and that is when we start introducing or adding in the tables that control our objects. Okay, so you can see in my tanks table, I have another column that is called capacity, which is just a real property that I made, and that's going to represent the metric ton capacity that we want to put on each one of our tanks. Okay, so how we would usually do this is we would specify that the tank object, we set this auto reference, the table row to true, and then we would say that, for example, this tank, its capacity, we set the reference. Let's go to the correct one, change that to weight, and set this reference to tanks.capacity. Great. And now that means that this tank will now look, this tank will now look at our table, and when we start this run, it'll have the capacity that we specified here. So the moment that's 0, I can make that 15 metric tons just for all of them. Okay. Right, so this tank now references this table, but the problem is this is a custom value that we've actually put in, and if I go copy this table, delete everything, and paste it in again, there we go. Now this will have reset. Okay, so the solution to that is I'm actually going to create a new tank. I'm going to subclass this object. Okay, call this my tank. Yes.
Change the capacity first and then subclass it.
Oh, okay, no problem. Okay, there we go. It's back to a tank now. Let's set this reference to capacity. Change this to weight. Okay, there we go. Now we can subclass it to a my tank. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change these inputs to the default inputs. Let's see. Okay, sorry, before I get to that, I'm just going to change this quick so that we're no longer creating a tank. We are now creating our subclass tank. Go. Okay. and then we update those defaults. So now, let's see. Now what we've done is every single tank that we've now created has the default capacity value of tanks.capacity, and it reads out of our data table, and we can specify for each tank we auto created specified capacity. And then we can do that for every property in this tank, and through that way we can actually control our objects and our whole model just out of these tables and create powerful data-driven models by having data tables that influence and affect the way our model runs. All right, so that is yes.
So Ruben, a question popped in here. As an experienced user, do you prefer to set up your nodes and links within Simio's data tables, or do you import them from external sources like Excel?
So out of my experience, what I do is I use Excel. So I get the coordinates, and then I use Excel to wrangle the coordinates and set up the paths, and then I copy it in. So you can see these Excel sheets that I've been copying in from is I mostly wrangle the data first in Excel and then copy it through into Simio.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a bit of a hint while doing this. Essentially, Simio's XYZ coordinates doesn't work exactly the same as a Cartesian plane. So X is X, but Z is Y and Y is Z. And so just take note and read the help file before just placing coordinates and expecting them to land as you'd expect with an XYZ. There's a difference. I don't know if it's different around the world if you've got different ways of viewing the XYZ coordinates. We're quite used to having Z as height, but in Simio, Y is height.
That's because you're
down.
on the other side of the equator. You're on the other side of the globe, so it just goes opposite. Good point, though. Thank you, Willem.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Philip. Okay, yeah, and that's it for our demonstration. So now I'm going to move on to the next section, which is looking at case studies where we've actually used this feature, and it saved us a massive amount of time, especially on very big 3D models. Okay. So as Willem said at the start, most of our work is actually in the mining industry. So we build lots of mining simulations. We simulate the whole mining system and the mining cycle, and you have to build a simulation model that accurately represents everything that's going on underground and on surface. And this can typically, but not exclusively, include a detailed mining cycle, or processing, or delivery. Also, it is material and explosive logistics, and that includes inventory, underground inventory of materials at each specific level, its usages, and then also the logistics surrounding getting the materials down there and making sure that you have enough. And then lastly, also, it is personnel management and logistics, meaning you have to simulate the detailed systems and processes that the personnel conduct to get them from the surface all the way down to the different underground levels where they have to then conduct work and then safely back up. So yeah, that's just a bit of a description or a summary of the underground simulations that we work with. So the two case studies then that we'll be looking at where we actually used this auto create feature and it saved us lots of time is the first one, an underground platinum mine. Okay, and as you can see here, this is an underground mine with two declines, and the declines are basically the ramps where the personnel and the vehicles move. It's these zigzag lines, and then you have your different mining half levels, which are represented by the parallel lines. It's about 12 half levels. One side is 14, but the other side is 12. Okay, so in this mine, we had to actually plot out every single production point and point where our personnel will be working and where we're going to be generating our ore tons. And the layout of that looks something like this. So yeah, we have over 100 different points that we had to plot in 3D, and then over 1,000 paths that connect these points to each other, and then a system of, or a series of paths and nodes that represent our declines where our personnel and vehicles move. So typically, a project like this, placing these nodes and the paths and just building this layout would take around about 32 hours. But with this new auto place feature, we actually saved 28 hours. So we were able to build this entire layout in just 4 hours, meaning that we had 28 hours left that we could purely spend on adding functionality, building in extra features, just making sure that the simulation model is working accurately. So that's 28 spare hours that you now have to just make your model better. And this, yeah, it's a great demonstration of the amount of time you can save with the auto place feature. Okay, next up is we have a block cave diamond mine. And in this case, we also have a whole series of nodes and paths and conveyors and tanks. Now, this is a very complex layout. We have quite a few raised lines, and then on each raised line, they drill into the wall and create stopes where the mining then takes place. And then within these raised lines, we then have vehicles moving and delivering all between the the production points and then tipping onto the conveyors. Now, typically, something as complicated as this would take minimum, I'd say, about 40 hours of development. However, in this case, this took us about 6 hours to build. We basically put in one line of nodes. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but yeah, just one of these blue lines. We put them in. We then got the coordinates for this line of nodes, and then we duplicated that on Excel, and then just incremented the lines by a certain factor, a few meters every time, and then we could easily populate the nodes of every single one of these lines. And then with the bit of clever naming convention, it was also not too difficult to then auto-create the paths between the nodes and then set up this entire system. So yeah, in this case also massive saving. We would have originally had to use 40 hours of development just to build this layout. With the auto placement, took us less than 1 day's work. 6 hours, being there's 34 hours left that we spent purely on adding features and just making the model better, improving our visualizations of our results. And yeah, that's 34 bonus hours that you can spend on making your models better. And yeah, that's it for our case studies. And yeah, I'm now going to hand over to Willem again, who's going to take us through the additional add-ins.
Essentially, there's basically just two add-ins that really tie on to the auto create functionality that you've seen now. I just need to skip ahead a couple. Okay. Basically, what these functions allow you to do is mass rename, and there's a import export one. So prior to having all these nice spreadsheet views that you can now just call up in Simio, this is what we use, but it's still in some cases quite useful for us. So especially when working on older models, we find it quite useful, and you can find all of these add-ins to Simio on the Simio forum. They were created, I think, mostly by Glenn Worth in Simio, well, in C#, which is basically the language you can create Simio API with, and there's a couple of others as well. But they're very useful. I'll quickly just show you what you can do with them. So basically, the rename one, you just go to Project Home. I'm not going to go through the whole process of getting these installed. That's also written up on the forum. But in essence, if you want a bulk rename, you just click the rename one. It creates a table for you. You put in the old name. So let's go for the spreadsheet view. Okay, we've got 2 transfer nodes that we want to rename. Okay, want to set up both. I want just node 1 or node 1. Let's go for that. Node 2. And then after you put in that set of information, you just simply click your rename and your functions are renamed. Now, obviously, if you create them through table-based creation, you don't need to do this. But if it's already there and you want a slightly better naming convention, this is just a quicker way of going about it. The import-export also quite useful. What's nice about that is you can export and import property values as well. So again, this was prior to the spreadsheet view. The spreadsheet view now enables most of this and just allows a quick change of properties and so forth. But yeah, they're there. They might be useful to you at some point. And yeah, that's round about it. I think one thing that Ruben skipped is the auto creation of elements, which is also possible. He quickly mentioned it, but what's nice about the auto creation of elements, so let's create a station. We can also give it initial values for specific things. So if you want to bulk create elements, you can then also give them default values and make your whole life a bit easier. So it's there, quite useful. I find myself using it a lot, creating tallies and then tallying the specific rows in my models. And so it just makes life a bit easier and reduces the amount of manual labor that we need to go through. Yeah, that's for the most part what we've got to share. Questions are welcome. Thanks.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Willem. Thank you, Ruben. Great presentation. So now if anyone out there has any questions, feel free to type it in the question box in the GoToWebinar dashboard. At this point in time, I've read the one question that came in. There's a few more that are being typed in as we speak, but one question that did come in that I can address is finding the recordings of the webcasts. So anyone that would like to go back and watch one of these webcasts or any of our prior webcasts, if you just go to simio.com, you will see right on our home splash screen, there is the Simio Solution Series webcast series. All you need to do is click on the webcast you want to watch. And unfortunately, right now, you still have to go and re-register to go into a webcast that's been put out there. We are working to take that re-registration off. But if you want to watch any webcast we've done at any at all point in 2022, they all are out there at this point that you can go out and watch them. All right, a couple other questions that are starting to pop in here. Can you use latitude and longitude instead of just X, Y, and Z?
Pretty sure you can. Haven't done it, but I think the functionality is there.
All right. Hold on. Someone's typing. Just bear with me here. All right. Do you also contain a model behavior such as processing tasks within data tables, or is that dictated by the availability of the data for that type of information?
Yeah. So doing the processing, like how do I put it, the logic behind it, mostly you can achieve that through subclassing the objects and creating custom logic so that the model inherently from that table-based design does what you want it to do. I wouldn't say that by default what we need to do is customize quite a lot because we typically don't use Simio in the manufacturing world. So we typically need to go and customize the objects to make it all work with the associated logic. Yeah, that's more or less what I've got to say about that. I'm testing the latitude and longitude thing in the background.
Okay, all right. See, we're getting real-time answers here. So if you're watching on recording, you're not getting the full appreciation for real-time answers. So here's a question, Willem and Ruben, that I don't know if we can get into right now, but I'm gonna ask it and see what you think. So someone says they're trying to follow the directions shown in the presentation to create the resources and assign their initial capacities. And they say when they hit the run button, they get an error that objects cannot assign their initial capacity being assigned. They're asking, can you hit the run button to see if the capacities are being assigned?
I can address
Yes.
your problem.
Do you want to take it?
You can just auto set maybe Ruben, if you can share your screen and just show that auto set row property.
Yes.
It might just be that error that's hitting them.
Okay. Share my
All right,
screen.
as you're going through that, so I'm having a real-time answer on your latitude and longitude. So someone basically said that yes, latitude and longitude can indeed be used, but the north must be at the top. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure yet. I see you just have to change your location type from Cartesian to geographic, and that allows you to do the latitude and longitude. And the auto set row, under advanced options, you see there's an auto set row. If you link it to the table and you didn't tick that, the objects wouldn't know where to refer to. So hopefully that sorts the issue.
Yes, and just to prove that. Oh, okay. Not sure what just happened over there. Oh, I know what. I changed mine to testing the Cartesian versus geographical. Now move to object. Right, and just to prove that now it works, let me run it. There we go. It's running, and want to look at the actual capacity of the tank. Let's see. There we go, 15 tons. Yeah, so I think that the error that the attendee was getting was just that the tanks didn't know which row to look at because this auto set row reference was set to false.
All right, perfect. All right, next question. Can a transporter reference the nodes that are within a table? Using your mining example, would cart/transporters be able to reference different node positions than they are supposed to travel to?
Yep. So what we typically do is we use search functionality. And so in your found leg, you can then either program there, or you can save the row that the transporter found in the table, and then use that row again in the transport. So we typically, now I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to. We typically write custom logic to control our vehicles, and so we control them through the processing interface rather than default stuff. But you can also use row referencing for vehicles to go between nodes in a table.
All right, great. All right, and going back, Ruben, the person that had the problem with the error, they basically said, okay, problem solved, thank you. So real-time solution.
Okay,
Looks like the questions they were coming fast and furious, now they've come to a halt. So I think we are running out of questions. I'll give everyone another 30 seconds here to type questions in case you have them. And as I'm giving that 30 seconds, I'll kind of do a little wrap up here. Once again, I think thanks everyone for the attendance this year. We do appreciate everyone being here for the time we have spent in these. And as I said in our intro, because of the attendance, because of the let's call it geez, I can't think of the word. We're happy that they're happy to keep doing these based upon the interest that everyone had in these. So we will definitely do them again next year, as I mentioned. Another question came in. Sorry, see, I'm trying to multitask and questions are typed in. So how do you first learn to use a data-driven approach for node and link creation? How did you guys first do this?
We keep track of your new sprint releases and test out every new feature that we can get our hands on. So that's how we started experimenting with this. But it's been, for us, building these underground models, it's been a real lifesaver. So we jumped at the opportunity of creating models through this auto creation and really just saves time. It's like the state columns in the professional version. It's the best thing just to use those like auto creation, bulk creation of variables, really just useful. So yeah, essentially play around with every new sprint.
Okay, great. All right, well, it looks like the questions are done coming in. So thank you guys for being part of our partner spotlight. We appreciate it. Thanks everyone once again for attending this year. The recording will be live here hopefully within 12 to 24 hours, if not sometime next week. Otherwise, we will wrap here. Thanks for attending, and we will see everyone again next year. Have a good rest of 2022. We'll see you next year.